What's the divorce rate in the U.S.? What's 50%? Okay. What's the rate of divorce in the church? About 50%, right? That's what we've heard. That's what we've been told. And so if you know you have a 1 in 2 chance of your marriage lasting, of course you're going to be concerned about that, right? Of course you're going to be worried about that. And so the study, I mean, what they found, absolutely. In 2006, there was a newspaper columnist, Shanti Fieldhan. She was writing a piece about marriage and divorce. And before she published her piece, her and her assistant, they wanted to fact check some of the statistics they were using, and they were using the 50% 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce, because that's kind of common knowledge. And so they went to fact check those statistics, and they thought it was going to be a 10, 15-minute task to go and find out where the source of those statistics came from. It actually ended up becoming an 8-year project. Because what they found is these numbers that are commonly told in news and in the media and by people like me standing up on a stage like this, that as they kept digging deeper and deeper, there was more and more conflict. And what they kept finding was one source would quote another source, and that source would quote another source, and there was never raw data to support the statistics. And she actually ended up, because what she found was so kind of a paradigm shift for her and just in how our culture views marriage, she ended up writing a book that came out a year or two ago called The Good News About Marriage. And she talked about this journey and some of the statistics and some of the things she learned. Here's what she said. Here's kind of the summary. She said, half of all marriages are not ending in divorce. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 72% of those who have ever been married are still married to their first spouse. So this is the government found this, 72% of people that are married are still married to their first spouse. And the 20% who are not married include those whose spouses have died. And so no one actually knows what the first marriage rate is, but based on the rate of widowhood, we can estimate that the rate of divorce probably is closer to 20 to 25%. That's a big difference. You go from 1 in 2 to 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 marriages ending in divorce. That's a huge difference. Now, that's still way too many, but that's good news, isn't it? And so if you're a young person, you're thinking about, I want to have a marriage that goes a distance. It's a paradigm shift to think, gosh, I have a 50% chance of this succeeding. To, you know what? The odds are actually in my favor. And so she challenged this idea, and now where did the 50% number come from? There's 2 thoughts on that. No one knows exactly, but one is in a given year, the number of people that file for marriage certificates, for new marriages, and then the number of people that file for divorce, there's about half as many people filing for divorce as for a new marriage. But that doesn't take into account all the existing marriages. But so someone could look at an annual number and say, well, it's 50%, but that's inaccurate. Probably where it came from was the U.S. Census Bureau used to project the divorce rate. Now, they stopped this in 1996 because they found it was inaccurate. But they used to project the divorce rate. And in the late 70s, the rate of divorce was declining. Then in the late 70s, for 3 or 4 years, it actually increased. And so the projections done back in the early 80s, based on those numbers, the few years of increase, said that by now, or in the early 21st century, the rate of divorce would be about 50%. And so that's where a lot of people think that 50% number comes from. But it's never even gotten close to that. And so you can have hope about marriage. Let me just give you 4 things that from her book. You can go read it. It's a great read. But here's just 4 kind of main takeaways that I took away. Now, the first one is this, is the vast majority of marriages do last a lifetime. The rate of divorce has never been close to 50%. It's actually been on the decline over the last 30 years. So the vast majority of marriages do last a lifetime. The next one is this. She found that if you're in a difficult place right now in your marriage, don't give up. See, we say this a lot. We say that we have a God that is in the business of reconciling and restoring relationships. That's who He is. That's what He does. And so if you're in a tough place in your marriage right now, don't give up. Don't quit. But now there's data to support that. Here's what she found. She said, among those who rated their marriages as very unhappy. So when they were surveyed, they said, you know what, my marriage is very unhappy right now, which was the lowest rating you could give it. Basically saying, you know what, I don't think we're going to make it. We're about done. Among those who rated their marriage as very unhappy, almost 8 out of 10 who avoided divorce were happily married 5 years later. That means that if they said, you know what, our marriage is in a difficult, hard place right now, but instead of separating, instead of taking, going to divorce, we stick together, we stay together and stick it out, that the odds are in your favor. 80% of people, a few years later, were happy in their marriage. That's huge, right? And that's data that supports what we say about what God does in relationships all the time, and we see it all the time. The next one is this. The rate of divorce in the church is not the same as among the non-church going population. It's actually significantly lower. Here's what she said. She said, every study that's ever been done has found that the rate of divorce among those who regularly attend church is much lower than among those who don't. Weekly church attendance. Now, she's not talking about praying together. She's not talking about reading your Bible with your spouse. She's not talking about anything else other than just going to church together. And so if you're a husband and wife that just go to church together, right? Not anything else, just go to church together. Weekly church attendance alone lowers the divorce rate significantly, roughly 25 to 50%, depending on the study and the group of people being studied. Multiple studies have found this. That just the fact, not if you say you're a Christian, but just the fact, if you go to church with your spouse, the chances of you getting a divorce are 25 to 50% lower than the non-church going population. That's huge. Last one is this. Is a significant majority of remarriages survive and thrive. People are pessimistic on divorce in marriages. People are even more pessimistic on people that are getting remarried, if you're in your second or third marriage. She said for all marriages, including second, third, fourth marriages, etc., the divorce rate is 31 to 35% range, which is still way better than 1 out of 2, 50%. And so if you're in a remarriage, chances are you're going to have a marriage that goes the distance.